Alright, welcome to our second lesson on finding the percentage of a quantity. In this lesson we'll do a little bit of a revision on how we convert fractions, decimals and percentages, because that is a core skill that you really need throughout this unit of work. And then I will teach you how to find the percentage of a given quantity. So, just to revise some of our fractions, this isn't exactly the same table that is in your booklet, but it will give you some more fractions, decimal and percentages relationships that you should have got in your work booklet. So if you haven't completed that table in your booklet, then again I encourage you to press the pause button and stop and do that work, and then I will fill this table out, and you can have a look at those as well, so you can have those in your repertoire. Alright, hopefully you've filled out the table and had a bit of a crack at it, and we'll see what we've got. So 1/10 is the same, sorry, I have to put on the pen, it's the same as 1.0, which is the same as 10%. Okay, 0.2, okay, is 20%, and it is 2 over 10, or it is 1/5. Okay, then we have a quarter, and a quarter is 0.25 and 25%. Alright, then you should have got 0.3, and of course 3 over 10. Okay, then we have 2/5. Now 2/5 is double what 1/5 is, so it is 0.4 and 40%. Then we have our halves, which we gave as an example in the very first flip learning lesson. Then we have 3/5, okay, and it is 0.6, and then we have 7/10, and it is 70%. You should be starting to see a little bit of a pattern happening here. 0.75 and 3/4. Okay, we've got 0.8, and that can also be 4/5. Can also be seen as 4/5. And it is 80%. And then we have 9/10. Okay, 0.9 or 90%, and of course we've got 1 over 1, which is the same as 1.0, it's just 1, okay, and of course when we look at our percentages it ends up being 100%, so hopefully you got those and you're feeling quite comfortable in changing from fractions to decimals to percentages again. So we're going to be concentrating a little bit more on our what is a percentage, and as I've said before in the definitions, the word percent, okay, comes from Latin word meaning per centum, which means out of 100. Okay, so whenever you see this, that number is out of 100. So if we had 75%, okay, it is basically saying that it is 75 out of 100. Okay, so that's the equivalent, out of 100. So we've got a grid here. It is 10 by 10. Okay, so we know when we multiply that it ends up having 100 squares. Okay, 100 squares in here. So if we were to colour in 10 squares, which this red one has done here, then that red coloured covers 10% of the 100 squares. Okay, so 10 out of 100 is equal to 10%, okay, which is our red. We then, when you look at the green here, so we're going to look at the green here, if we actually divide, you see we've got 5 by 5 square, so 5 squares by 5 squares, if we multiply that, gives us 25 squares. And we know by looking at our crossover that it is a quarter, okay, a quarter of our 100 squares, which gives us 25%. okay, which we've got here. Here they've just coloured in 5 squares in blue, and that does 5 squares out of 100 gives us 5%. And then we have our one purple square here. 1 out of 100 squares gives us 1%. So you can see here that using a grid of 10 by 10 can give us our percentages. So I'd like you to give that a bit of a go. So here we have some diagrams with coloured in squares. I would like you to work out the percentages for these 6. So press the pause button on your recording and have a go at these 6. Alright, so you've had a bit of a go. Hopefully you've been able to do it. So we'll look at A first. We've got 4 rows here. Okay, so it is 4 lots of 10. Okay, 4 lots of 10, which of course gives us 40. And then we have another 7 here. So 47 squares have been done, which gives us 47% of that is shaded. Now it could have been really easy for you to go 10 plus 10 plus 10 plus 10, but that's not quite right. We've got 1 row here, we've got 1 row here of 10. Okay, that gives us 20, but then there's only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 on each side after that. So we actually have 28% shaded there. Here we have 2 rows of 10, which gives us our 20. Then we've got another two half rows, so 5 and 5, which ends up giving us 30%. Okay. Here a bit tricky, we've only got 1 complete row of 10. Then we have 9 and 9, I do believe. So we've got 28%. That's a row of 10 through there. Then we have a row of, I'll change colour pens, we've got a row of 9 and another row of 9 going through there. Okay, so I'll go back to my almighty blue pen. Here, nice easy one, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 columns. Okay, columns of 10, so 8 lots of 10 gives us 80%. Then we have here, again with these quarters, you can see that looking at that, there's a quarter not shaded. So really, 3/4 is shaded. And if we look back at our fractions grids, we do know that 3/4 is the same as 75% is shaded there. So hopefully you did well with that. So, the core business of today's lesson, finding a percentage of quantity. Okay, you've just done that. Back here, you've found the quantity that is shaded of the 100 that it's out of. So you've actually been finding a quantity. But how do we do it mathematically? To find a percentage, a part of a quantity, which is an amount, so find a part of an amount, we can use 2 different techniques. It depends on whether you love working with fractions or if you love working with decimals. Just depends. But the most important thing is to remember that the word of, and I mentioned it in class the other day, of means to multiply. Okay, so when you see the word of, in most cases, okay, there are some cases where it's not, but if you see of, it means to multiply. Okay, how do you solve this question? Find 23% of 300. Okay, there's 2 techniques. The first one is convert the percentage, this is this one here, the 23, to a decimal. Okay, so a decimal, as soon as we start doing it, 23% is the same as 0.23. Okay, you can work that out by going 23 divided by 100 equals, and it equals 0.223 in your calculator. Okay, so 0.23, we know of means to multiply. So 23% of 300. We pop that into our calculator, and we will get 69. Okay. Technique 2, if you like working with fractions, you go 23% again. 23% is always out of 100. Okay. Put that using your fraction key on your calculator, and then times by 300, and that equals 69. Okay, so two different techniques. If you don't like fractions, then use the decimal. If you don't like decimals, then use the fraction. Okay, but both work and both are fine. So here's another example for you. 30% of $85. So you need this when you go out shopping, okay, and doing quite a few life skills. So it's important to be able to do this. So using the decimal system, 30% as a decimal equals 0.3. As a fraction, 30% equals 30 over 100, which is the same as 3 out of 10. Okay, so we've got now what we can work with. Okay, we've got our of, so we know we need to multiply. So we've got 0.3 times $85. Okay, and that gives us $25.50 when you put it into your calculator. So that's why it's important to have your calculator with you. We do the same here, put it into your fractions key, okay, times it by 85, okay, and it gives you exactly the same answer. It's important whenever you're using money, okay, whenever you're using money, that if you need to round it, it should always be rounded to 2 decimal places, okay, because that's how money is shown. Don't ever give money as an answer of 1 decimal place or 3 decimal places. Make sure it always goes to 2 decimal places. Alright, so what I would like you to do now is I would like you to test your skills at finding a percentage of a quantity. You have these questions in your work booklet, so like my other flip learning lesson, you need to pause your recording now, and then I will get back to you and give you the answers to this, and you can check your working. Okay, it's really important that you have a go at these and don't just keep on watching, because you need to see if you have good understanding of it. Alright, welcome back. I hope you've done well. So our first question here, we've got 16%. I'm going to use the decimal method because that's what works for me. So 16% is the same as 0.16, or if you're using your fractions, 16 over 100. So 0.16 times 300, okay, equals 48. Hopefully you got 48. Now we've got 8%. 8% as a decimal is 0.08. Okay, I need to times that by 76, and that equals 6.08. Now we've got 4.5%. 4.5% as a decimal is equal to 4.5 divided by 100, because that's how we convert, which is equal to 0.045. Okay, so 0.045 times 350 equals 15.75. Okay, so we've got 32%. 32% is equal to 0.32. So we've got 0.32 times $15. Okay, remember, whatever happens here, we need our decimal points to be to 2 decimal points. So when we look at this, we end up getting the answer of 4.8. It is important that you recognize that 4.8 is the same as, I have to write it over here, is the same as $4.80. Okay, you need to put the 0 on there. Didn't mean to make it look like time. You need to put the 0 on there to make it money. Okay, to be able to do that. Alright, the next questions that was on there. Alright, now we're looking at days, so we need to remember that when we're writing our answer. So we've got 12.5%, which is equal to 0.125 as a decimal. We need to times that by the number of days, which is 72, and that equals 9. But it's important that you write days afterwards, because we need to know exactly what we have of the quantity. We've got 9 days of the quantity, so we need to make sure we do that. So we've got 33 and a third percent, okay, of 1560, okay, which is our dollars. Okay, so we're looking at money. So as a decimal, I change it to just 0.33 times 15.6 equals, and it gives you 5.148. Now this 8 is greater than or equal to 5. Okay, so it's greater than 5, so we need to increase the number beside, so this 4 to round it. So that should equal $5.15. Okay, so you need to make sure that you can actually round your decimals. So we've got a 0.75%, so that's a very small number of this $70. Okay, so it's very small. So to change that, convert that to a decimal, we need to go 3/4 divided by 100. Okay, and that gives us 0.0075. So it is a very small percent. So we should get, when you're estimating in your head to be able to confirm what you get, we end up getting 0.525 as our answer on our calculator. Now again, we're talking money, so it has to be to 2 decimal places. We only want 2 decimal places. So we need to look at this one. Is it greater than or equal to 5? Yes, it is. Therefore, we have to increase the number beside. So the 2 needs to go up 1, which ends up giving us 0.53 cents. And that makes sense to me. We had $70. We're looking at only a 3/4 of a percent of $70. So it needs to be a really small number, and 53 cents makes sense to me when I was looking at it. So now we've got something like 145%. Okay, changing that into a decimal, 145 divided by 100 gives me 1.45. Okay, so this should actually increase. Okay, so I'm expecting a larger number than 60. So we go 1.45 times 60. Oh, that's a terrible 60. Punch it into your calculator, and we do. We get more than $60, which we should, because it's 145% of $60, and we get $87. Okay, so hopefully you've done well with that. If you haven't, come and see me in class tomorrow. So here's our traffic light checks, similar to the notes, the cards that we have on our desks in class. Red light means it's the core stuff. So you're able to do the core business of what we need to know about this lesson. The orange is just that little bit harder, above core, okay? And green light is really an extension, a real challenge question, okay? So the most important thing is to be able to do this one, okay? If you can do the red light, then that's good. You've got the core that you need to know on this lesson, okay? Then we start looking at the next one, and it's just that little bit harder. So if you're looking to really stretch yourself, then have a go at these. So again, press the pause button and give these 3 questions a go. If you only want to try the red and the yellow, then that's fine. If you want to try all 3. but have a bit of a go. Challenge yourself. Take a risk. It's okay to make a mistake. Write something down. The only way you learn is by trying. Okay, and in maths, it's all about experimenting, reflecting, trying again. So press the pause button, and you'll hear me in a minute. All right, let's have a look and see how you went. So we're looking at 8%. So we go 8% divided by 100, which gives us 0.08. Okay, so we go 0.008 times 600, and it's dollars, and that gives us $48. Okay, if you just wrote 48, you've got to look back and see what it's talking about. Now, this is a little bit tricky, okay, because we need to have a look and get these into the same quantities, but we also need to do something a little bit tricky as well. So first of all, how many? We need both to be in mils, okay, milliliters. So we need to know that there is 1,000 milliliters in a litre. Okay, and we've got 2 litres, so this equals 2,000 milliliters. So we've really got 5 mils to 2,000 mils. Okay, milliliters. And we want to know how much is 5 mils of 2,000 milliliters. So how do we do this? Well, we're trying to find a percentage, which is a bit tricky. So it's a little bit different to what we've been doing. So what I do is, you can see we're looking at a kind of a ratio, and we're going to learn about ratios later on. 5 divided by 2,000 is the first thing I do. And that gives us 0.0025, okay, as a percentage really of this. So what is that as? And that's a decimal, but how can we express that as a percentage? Well, we need to times by 100 to find out what it is as a percentage. And that ends up being 0.0, and it ends up being 1/4%, okay, or 0.2525% when we times it by that. So it is, and it makes sense when we're looking at 5 mils compared to 2,000 mils. It makes sense that it's a really small percentage. So it's 1/4% is the final answer. So what percentage? Again, we're looking at the percentage. And again, we don't have the same units. Okay, we've got minutes and we've got hours. So we need to get them both to the same unit. So of course, we need to change our hours to minutes. We know that there's 60 minutes in an hour. And so we need to times that by 2 to get 2 hours worth. So we've got 120 minutes. Okay, so we have 6 minutes divided by 120 minutes to find out what it is, and that gives us 0.05. Now we need to find that out as a percentage because we've got it as a decimal at the moment, and when we want to change a decimal to a percentage, we multiply by 100, and that equals 5%. Okay, so it's a little bit advanced, a little bit tricky, but that's the idea behind it. We also have, for all of those who want to have a bit of a look into what we're going to be learning next and see if they have any skills and problem solving skills to try and work out something that I haven't taught you yet, we're going to do this challenge question. So pause the video again and have a go at this. Just have a look when you do. Have a look at the numbers that you have here, and I'll give you a hint that you want to do one part of the question, okay? Then you want to do the second part of the question. Okay, there. Okay, so there's two parts to it. Alright, pause and I'll get back to you. Alright, so let's see how we do this. We're going to do part one. Part one here. Okay, the first part. We're going to look at this. Ignore everything else. So it's very similar to what we've been doing. So we need to increase, that's new, 120 by 10%. So we need to find out what 10% of 120 is. Okay, so if you get told by a shop that, oh, you should buy something now because everything's going up by 10% next week, you'd really like to know what you're going to be saving this week in comparison to actually coming back to the shop next week because everything's going up 10%. So we go 120 times 10%, okay, which is 10 over 100, or if you want to use the decimal method, 0.1. So 120 times 10 over 100, or 0.1. So I like my decimal method, which ends up being $12. Okay? Well, 12, I should say. Now, because it says increase 120 by 10, we need to add that $12 to the 120. So next week, if we were buying something for $120, say, and it's going up 10%, next week if we came back to the shop, it would cost us $132. So we would be saving, if we bought it this week, $12. Now the second half of this says decrease the result. Here is our result, okay, from our first half, the result. There it is. 132 is the number that we need to be working with. And we need to decrease the result by 10%. So we're now using this number, 132, and we need to decrease it by 10%, but we have to work out what 10% of 132 is. So how do we do that? We go 132 times 0.1. We already know what 10% is because we used it up here. Okay, and that ends up equaling, put it into your calculator, 13.2. Okay, 13.2. So, because it's decrease, that means we have to take it away. Increase meant adding it on. Okay, so we need to subtract. So, what are we subtracting from? We're subtracting from the result. They tell us. Decrease from the result. Here is our result. We named it before. So we have to go 132 minus 13.2. Punch that into your calculator and you get $118. Oh, I keep on saying dollars, but it actually doesn't say dollars there. It just gives us 118.8 as our final result. And that is the final answer to this challenge question. Let me know how you went in class tomorrow, and now you can hopefully, confidently find the quantity of a given amount. Alright, thank you.